Lisa Martinez thought Tuesday morning would be like any other day. She grabbed her backpack from the small apartment she shared with her roommate Amy Collins and headed across the Kansas State University campus. The autumn air was crisp, and she pulled her jacket tighter as she walked to her biology class. At 22, Lisa considered herself completely ordinary. She got average grades, worked part-time at the campus coffee shop, and spent most evenings studying or watching movies with Amy. Her biggest worry was the midterm exam coming up next week. She had no idea that in 3 hours, her entire world would change forever. The first sign something was wrong came during her morning biology lecture. Professor Stone was explaining cell division when the lights in the classroom began to flicker. Then the windows started to glow with a strange green light. It definitely was not the sun. Students began looking around nervously. Some pulled out their phones to record what they thought might be an unusual weather event. Lisa pressed her face against the window and gasped. The sky was shimmering like water, with colors that should not exist flowing across the clouds. Within minutes, the shimmer began to solidify into shapes. Massive objects descended through the atmosphere, so large they blocked out portions of the sky. They looked like enormous metal cathedrals, dark and angular, with surfaces that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Professor Stone stopped talking mid-sentence. Everyone in the classroom was now staring out the windows in complete silence. The ships, because that was clearly what they were, settled into positions above major cities across the horizon. Lisa could see at least 5 of them from her classroom window. Her phone buzzed with an emergency alert. Then another. Then dozens more as news apps and social media exploded with reports from around the world. The same thing was happening everywhere. Giant alien ships had appeared over every major population center on Earth. Amy texted her frantically. "Lisa, where are you? Are you seeing this? The news says aliens are here. Real aliens. What do we do?" Lisa had no answer. She had studied biology for 3 years, but nothing in her textbooks had prepared her for this moment. She looked around the classroom and saw the same confusion and fear on every face. Professor Stone was trying to get information on his laptop, but the internet seemed to be overloaded. The first broadcast from the aliens came exactly 1 hour after their arrival. Every television, radio, and internet-connected device on Earth simultaneously displayed the same message. The being that appeared on screen was clearly not human. It stood nearly 8 feet tall, with pale gray skin and large black eyes. When it spoke, its voice was translated into every human language. "People of Earth, I am Commander Vex of the Zelani Empire. Your world is now under our control. Do not resist. Those who cooperate will be allowed to live and serve. Those who resist will be eliminated. You have 24 hours to begin the surrender of your governments and military forces." The message repeated 3 times and then ended. Lisa stared at her phone screen long after it had gone dark. The coffee shop where she worked seemed incredibly unimportant now. Her midterm exam might as well have been canceled forever. Students began leaving the classroom in small groups, speaking in hushed, scared voices. Lisa gathered her things slowly, not sure where to go or what to do. Professor Stone approached her as she headed for the door. "Lisa, wait," he said. "I know this is terrifying, but I need smart students to help me figure out what we're dealing with. I have equipment in my lab that might be able to analyze their technology. Will you help me?" Lisa nodded without really thinking about it. What else was she going to do? Go home and hide under her bed? At least in the lab, she might learn something useful. Professor Stone's physics lab was in the basement of the science building. By the time they got there, several other students had already arrived, including Jake Morrison, a graduate student who had served in the Army before returning to school. His military experience suddenly seemed much more valuable than anyone had expected. They spent the next several hours monitoring news broadcasts and trying to understand what was happening. The reports were not encouraging. Major cities around the world were being occupied by Zilani forces. Their technology was far beyond anything humans possessed. Energy weapons that could level buildings in seconds. Ships that moved without any visible propulsion. Soldiers in armor that seemed to make them nearly invulnerable. The worst part was how organized and efficient the invasion was. This was not the chaotic attack of a desperate enemy. This was the methodical conquest of a superior force that had clearly done this many times before. World leaders attempted to negotiate, but the aliens were not interested in discussion. They wanted complete surrender, and they wanted it immediately. When the President of the United States tried to propose terms for a peaceful coexistence, the response was swift and brutal. The alien ships above Washington, D.C. fired a single beam of energy that vaporized the Washington Monument. The message was clear. By evening, most governments had officially surrendered. The alternative was the complete destruction of their major population centers. Humanity had lasted exactly 1 day as a free species. Lisa sat in the lab with a small group of students and Professor Stone, listening to the surrender announcements on the radio. She felt numb. Everything she had planned for her future seemed meaningless now. Would she ever finish college? Would she ever see her family again? Her parents lived in Texas, which was now under alien occupation. Like everywhere else, Jake Morrison was the first to speak what everyone was thinking. So what do we do now? Just give up and hope they treat us well? Professor Stone was examining data from instruments that had been monitoring the alien ships. I don't think that's an option, he said quietly. Look at this energy signature. These ships aren't just here for occupation. They're strip mining our atmosphere. Whatever they want from Earth, I don't think it includes keeping humans alive long term. Lisa felt something change inside her at those words. Maybe it was fear, or maybe it was anger, but suddenly sitting in the lab waiting for aliens to decide her fate seemed like the worst possible choice. She had spent her whole life being ordinary, following rules, doing what was expected. But the rules had just been thrown out the window, along with human civilization. Then we fight, she said, surprising herself with how steady her voice sounded. We figure out how their technology works, and we fight back. Jake smiled grimly. I was hoping someone would say that, because I've been thinking the same thing. They may have better weapons, but they don't know us yet. And if there's one thing humans are good at, it's learning how to survive. Professor Stone nodded slowly. The university has extensive tunnel systems for utilities and emergency shelters. We could hide there while we figure out our next move. Lisa looked around at the small group of frightened students and one determined professor. It was not exactly an army, but it was a start. And for the first time since the ships had appeared, she felt like she had some control over her own destiny. She was no longer just a normal girl. None of them were normal anymore. Everything had gone wrong, but maybe that meant everything was also possible. 3 months had passed since the Zilani ships first appeared in Earth's sky. Lisa Martinez barely recognized the person she had become. The scared college student was gone, replaced by someone who could plan raids, coordinate supply runs, and make life or death decisions for dozens of people. The university tunnels had become home to over 200 survivors. What started as Professor Stone's small group had grown into something much larger. Word had spread through hidden radio networks that the campus was a safe place where people were fighting back. Instead of just hiding, Lisa walked through the main tunnel that connected the science building to the library. The concrete walls were now covered with maps, supply lists, and communication schedules. Solar panels stolen from abandoned houses powered their equipment. Water came from the campus. Well, that the aliens had not bothered to shut off. Food came from raids on empty stores, and from the small garden they had started in the old gymnasium. She stopped at the communication center, where Jake Morrison was listening to reports from other resistance groups. His military training had proved invaluable in teaching the others basic tactics and weapon handling. More importantly, he had shown them how to think like soldiers instead of like victims. Any news from the Denver group? Lisa asked. Jake looked up from the radio with a grim smile. Good news and bad news. The good news is they figured out how to jam the alien patrol drones. The bad news is the aliens responded by sending in ground troops to clear out 3 city blocks. Lisa nodded. They had learned that every victory came with a price. The Zelani did not like being defied, and they had no problem killing humans. To make their point, but something unexpected was happening. Instead of crushing human resistance, the alien responses were making it stronger. Professor Stone emerged from his makeshift laboratory with a device that looked like a radio crossed with a medical scanner. Over the past months, he had become obsessed with understanding Zelani technology. His breakthrough had come from studying pieces of damaged alien equipment recovered from crash sites. I think I've got it working, he said, holding up the device. This should be able to detect Zelani biosignatures from about half a mile away. No more surprise patrols. Lisa took the scanner and examined it. The professor had built it using parts from broken alien drones, human electronics, and components salvaged from the university's physics lab. It should not have worked, but somehow it did. That seemed to be the story of human resistance everywhere. They were making impossible things work through pure determination and creative thinking. Amy Collins approached them carrying a backpack full of supplies. Lisa's former roommate had turned out to be excellent at sneaking through occupied areas and trading with other survivor groups. She had just returned from a 3-day mission to Kansas City. You need to hear what I learned, Amy said, her voice tight with excitement and worry. The aliens are not just occupying us. They're studying us. I talked to a group that escaped from one of their research facilities. The Zelani are trying to figure out why we're not behaving the way their computers predicted. This was new information, and it explained something that had been puzzling Lisa for weeks. The alien responses to human resistance had been increasingly desperate and brutal. It was as if they were fighting an enemy they did not understand. Jake leaned forward. What do you mean, not behaving as predicted? Amy pulled out a small notebook where she had written down everything the escaped prisoners had told her. According to what the aliens said during their experiments, every other species they conquered followed the same pattern. Initial resistance, then gradual acceptance, and cooperation within 6 months. Humans are doing the opposite. The longer the occupation goes on, the more organized and effective the resistance becomes. Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. They're studying us to figure out how to break us. That's what I thought too, Amy continued. But here's the thing. The escaped prisoners said the aliens seemed scared. Not angry, scared. Like they had never encountered anything like this before. Professor Stone set down his scanner and stared at Amy. Scared of us? They have ships that can destroy cities. Think about it, Lisa said, the pieces starting to come together in her mind. They expected us to surrender permanently after our governments gave up. Instead, we kept fighting. They expected us to get weaker over time. Instead, we're getting stronger and smarter. They expected us to follow their rules of war. Instead, we're making up new rules as we go. Jake was nodding. Slowly. In the army, we called it asymmetric warfare. When you can't match the enemy's strengths, you make them fight on your terms instead. But this is bigger than that. We're not just using different tactics. We're thinking in ways they can't predict. Over the following weeks, this new understanding changed everything about how the resistance operated. Instead of just trying to survive, they began actively working to confuse and frustrate the aliens. They developed tactics that made no logical sense from a military perspective, but worked. Anyway, Lisa's group began leaving false clues that led alien patrols into empty buildings rigged with noisemakers and smoke bombs. The goal was not to cause damage, but to waste the aliens' time and make them paranoid about phantom threats. Other groups started spreading fake radio communications to make the aliens think there were resistance cells in places where no humans lived. The most successful operation came when they discovered that Zelani technology relied heavily on standardized components. Professor Stone had figured out how to modify a single type of alien sensor so that it would report false readings. Lisa organized teams to plant the modified sensors throughout the occupied zone. Within days, the aliens were responding to phantom attacks, chasing imaginary resistance fighters, and completely reorganizing their patrol patterns based on fake intelligence. The chaos bought real resistance groups the time and space they needed to conduct actual operations. But the aliens were learning too. Commander Vex had begun adapting his tactics to account for human unpredictability. Patrols became more random. Captured resistance fighters were interrogated more thoroughly. Most concerning of all, the aliens had begun targeting civilian populations in areas where resistance activity was suspected. Lisa stood in the main tunnel late one night, looking at reports from resistance groups across the country. The pattern was clear. Humans were winning small victories everywhere, but the cost was getting higher. The aliens were becoming more ruthless as they became more frustrated. Jake joined her, carrying 2 cups of coffee made from beans they had traded for. Medical supplies. "Penny for your thoughts," he said. Lisa accepted the coffee gratefully. "I'm thinking about what Amy said, about the aliens being scared. I think we're in a race." "What kind of race?" "Either we figure out how to hurt them badly enough that they leave, or they figure out how to break us completely. And I'm not sure which side is going to win." Jake was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled. "You know what? I'm not worried. Because there's one thing the aliens still don't understand about humans." "What's that?" "We get more dangerous when we're cornered, not less. And they just cornered the entire human race." Lisa looked around at the tunnel full of people who had refused to give up, who had learned to fight back against impossible odds, who had discovered they were capable of things they never imagined. The scared college student was completely gone now. In her place was someone who believed that humans could do the impossible. She was ready for the next phase of the war. 6 months after the invasion began, Lisa Martinez stood in what used to be the university's main lecture hall. The room had been completely transformed into a command center for the North American Resistance Coalition. Maps covered every wall, showing supply routes, safe houses, and confirmed alien installations across 3 states. The scared biology student from that first day was now completely gone. In her place stood someone who could coordinate attacks across multiple cities and make strategic decisions that affected thousands of lives. Her hair was shorter now, pulled back in a practical style. Her hands were calloused from handling weapons and equipment. Most importantly, her eyes held a confidence that came from winning battles that everyone said were impossible to win. Jake Morrison entered the command center carrying a stack of reports from field teams. His role had evolved from tactical advisor to intelligence coordinator. The military training that had once made him different from the college students now made him invaluable in ways he had never expected. The Seattle group pulled off another major hit, he said, spreading photographs across the main table. They took out an entire alien supply depot using nothing but modified farm equipment and homemade explosives. Lisa studied the photos with satisfaction. The Seattle resistance had turned agricultural machinery into weapons by adding armor plating and mounting. salvaged alien energy weapons on tractors and harvesters. The aliens had no defense against tactics they had never encountered. On any other world, Professor Stone looked up from his workstation, where he was monitoring alien communications. Over the past months, he had become the Coalition's expert on Zelani technology. His biggest breakthrough had come when he figured out how to tap into their command network without being detected. "I'm picking up something interesting," he said. "The aliens are requesting reinforcements from their home fleet. Commander Vex is describing the situation here as a Category 7 resistance event." Amy Collins, who had become the Coalition's primary liaison with other resistance groups, paused in her radio work. "What does that mean?" Professor Stone turned his chair to face the others. "According to the communications I've intercepted, it means this is the first time in over 1,000 years that the Zelani have encountered organized resistance that gets stronger over time instead of weaker." Lisa felt a surge of pride mixed with worry. Being unique was good, but it also meant the aliens would eventually throw everything they had at Earth to solve the problem. The question was whether humanity could become strong enough to survive. That response, the resistance had indeed grown stronger. What started as scattered groups hiding in tunnels and basements had evolved into a sophisticated network spanning continents. The Chinese resistance had developed biological weapons that specifically targeted Zelani physiology. European groups had created a communication system that used the aliens' own satellites to coordinate attacks. African resistance fighters had perfected mobile tactics that made them impossible to track. South American teams had learned to manufacture explosives from local materials that alien sensors could not detect. But the biggest advantage was something no one had expected. Humans had proven to be incredibly good at reverse engineering alien technology, not through superior understanding, but through trial and error experimentation conducted by people who refused to accept that something could not be done. Lisa walked over to a display case that held examples of human innovation. There was a weapon that combined a Zelani energy cell with a human-built focusing system. Next to it sat a communication device that could intercept alien transmissions using modified radio parts. The centerpiece was a scanner that could detect alien life forms from over a mile away, built entirely from salvaged components. None of these devices should have worked according to conventional engineering principles. But humans had a talent for making impossible things work when they had no other choice. Jake spread out a new set of maps showing recent resistance activities. "We've got confirmed hits on alien installations in over 40 cities this week. The pattern is consistent everywhere. We hit them, they respond with overwhelming force, but by the time they arrive, we're already gone and hitting them somewhere else." This was the key to human success. The aliens had superior technology and firepower, but they fought like a conventional military force. They made plans, gathered intelligence, and executed coordinated attacks. Humans had learned to fight like water, flowing around obstacles and striking where the enemy was weakest. Amy tuned her radio to a frequency used by the European resistance network. The voice that came through spoke English with a thick German accent. "This is Munich base calling American Coalition. We have successfully completed Operation Hornet's Nest. Repeat, the Munich base has been eliminated. The aliens are in complete disarray in our sector." Lisa took the microphone. "This is Kansas Command. Congratulations on your success. What was your methodology?" "We convinced them that our main base was in the mountains south of the city. While they were attacking empty caves with their entire garrison, we walked into their headquarters through the front door. They never expected us to attack the place they had just left undefended." Jake laughed and shook his head. "That's brilliant. Completely insane, but brilliant." This was happening everywhere. Human resistance groups were winning through tactics that made no sense from a traditional military perspective. They were using the aliens' own logic against them. exploiting the fact that Zilani forces followed predictable patterns. Professor Stone's monitoring equipment suddenly came alive with urgent communications. He listened intently, translating the alien language in real time. "This is bad," he said. "Commander Vex is reporting to someone called the High Command. He's describing human resistance as a threat to the entire Zilani Empire." Lisa moved to stand behind the professor's chair. "What kind of threat?" "According to this conversation, news of human resistance is spreading to other conquered worlds. Species that have been under Zilani control for decades are starting to rebel. They're using human tactics and human weapons designs." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The human resistance had accidentally started a galactic revolution. Amy was the first to speak. "So we're not just fighting for Earth anymore." "No," Lisa said, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. "We're fighting for every species that has ever been conquered by these aliens." Jake studied the tactical displays with new understanding. That explains why they're getting more desperate. They're not just trying to conquer one more world. They're trying to prevent the collapse of their entire empire. Professor Stone continued monitoring the alien communications. "There's more. The High Command is sending a fleet to Earth with orders to eliminate all human resistance permanently. But there's something else. Another alien species called the Hegemony is also heading toward Earth. Apparently, they're enemies of the Zilani." Lisa looked around at her team. 6 months ago, they had been ordinary people trying to survive an alien invasion. Now they were at the center of an interstellar war that could reshape the galaxy. "How long do we have?" she asked. "The Zilani reinforcements will arrive in 3 weeks. The Hegemony fleet is about a month behind them." Lisa turned to face the maps and displays that showed the scope of human resistance. Thousands of people were counting on the decisions made in this room. Millions more on other worlds were watching to see if rebellion against the Zilani was truly possible. The normal girl who had worried about college exams was completely gone. In her place stood someone who had learned that humans were capable of changing the fate of entire civilizations when they refused to accept defeat. The real war was about to begin. 1 year after the Zilani ships first appeared over Earth, Lisa Martinez stood on the observation deck of a captured alien battleship orbiting her home planet. The view of Earth below, scarred but unbroken, filled her with emotions she could barely name. Pride, certainly. Relief, without question. But most of all, she felt a deep sense of purpose that had nothing to do with the scared college student she used to be. The ship around her buzzed with activity as human technicians worked alongside alien prisoners to understand systems that had once seemed impossibly advanced. What had started as desperate improvisation had evolved into something unprecedented in galactic history. Humans had not just defeated a superior enemy. They had absorbed their technology and made it better. Jake Morrison approached her, carrying a data pad filled with reports from around the galaxy. His role had expanded far beyond anything either of them could have imagined a year ago. He was now coordinating resistance movements on dozens of worlds, using communication networks that spanned star systems. "The news keeps getting better," he said, unable to hide his amazement. "The rebellion on Kepler 442b succeeded yesterday. That makes 17 worlds that have thrown off Zilani control using tactics developed by human resistance groups." Lisa took the datapad and scrolled through the reports. Each one told a similar story. Species that had accepted Zilani rule for generations had suddenly remembered how to fight back. They were using human-designed weapons, human tactical innovations, and most importantly, human refusal to accept defeat. Professor Stone emerged from the ship's main computer core, where he had been working with a team of former Zilani technicians who had defected to the human cause. The professor's understanding of alien technology had grown beyond anything he had thought possible when this all began. "I've finished analyzing the Zilani historical databases," he said. "What we accomplished here was not just unlikely. According to their records, it should have been impossible. No species in their 1,000-year history of conquest had ever successfully resisted for more than 6 months." Amy Collins joined them at the observation windows. She had just returned from a diplomatic mission to the approaching hegemony fleet. The aliens who had been the Zilani's primary enemies were now very interested in forming an alliance with the humans who had accomplished the impossible. "The hegemony representatives want to meet with you personally," she told Lisa. "They're calling humans the greatest military innovation in galactic history. They want to learn our methods and apply them to their own war against the Zilani Empire." Lisa looked out at the stars and considered the weight of what Amy was telling her. A year ago, she had been worried about passing a biology exam. Now, alien civilizations wanted to learn from her species about the art of war. The past 3 weeks had been a whirlwind of impossible victories. When the Zilani reinforcement fleet arrived, they expected to face the same scattered resistance that Commander Vex had been struggling against. Instead, they found a coordinated human space force using modified alien technology and tactics that defied every principle of space combat. The decisive battle had lasted only 4 hours. Human fighters, built from salvaged Zilani components and powered by human engineering improvements, had swarmed the alien fleet like angry insects. The Zilani had weapons designed to fight other conventional space fleets. They had no defense against small, fast ships that attacked in patterns too chaotic to predict or counter. But the real victory had come when Commander Vex himself requested a meeting under a flag of truce. The alien leader, who had arrived a year ago expecting easy conquest, now stood as a prisoner in the ship's detention center, waiting to be questioned about Zilani military capabilities and territorial holdings. Lisa made her way to the detention center, accompanied by Jake and Professor Stone. Commander Vex sat behind a force field barrier, his gray skin looking paler than usual. The alien who had once threatened to eliminate all human resistance now looked tired and defeated. "You wanted to speak with me," Lisa said. Commander Vex looked up at her with his large black eyes. When he spoke, his words came through a translator device, but his tone needed no interpretation. It was the voice of someone who had seen his entire understanding of the universe collapse. "I have been a military commander for over 200 of your years," he said. "I have conquered 47 worlds for the Zilani Empire. I thought I understood warfare. I thought I understood how species respond to superior force." Lisa waited for him to continue. "Your species does not make sense," Commander Vex said. "Every tactical manual, every psychological profile, every mathematical model predicted that humans would follow the same pattern as every other conquered species. Initial resistance, followed by gradual acceptance, followed by cooperation. Instead, you became more dangerous the longer we fought you." Jake stepped forward. "Why? What made us different?" The alien commander was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that neither the humans nor their translator devices were prepared. "Oh, you fight like you have nothing to lose, even when you are winning. Every other species fights to preserve what they have. Humans fight to become what they could be. This is not logical. This is not predictable. This is why my empire is falling apart." Professor Stone leaned forward with interest. "Falling apart?" Commander Vex nodded slowly. "Rebellion on 18 worlds and counting. Our subject species learned from watching your broadcasts. They learned that the Zilani could be defeated. More importantly, they learned that being conquered does not mean being broken." Lisa felt a chill of understanding. "We didn't just beat you. We changed the rules of how conquest works." "Yes," the alien commander said. For 1,000 years, the Zelani Empire expanded because defeated species stayed defeated. Now they know that victory is possible even after surrender. You have made conquest meaningless. Lisa left the detention center with her mind racing. The implications of what Commander Vex had told them were staggering. Humanity had not just won a war. They had accidentally invented a new form of resistance that was spreading across the galaxy faster than any empire could contain it. Amy was waiting for her. In the ship's communications center, where screens showed diplomatic messages from dozens of star systems, the hegemony wanted a military alliance. Former Zelani subjects wanted human advisors to help organize the rebellions. Even neutral species wanted to establish trade relationships with the humans who had changed galactic politics forever. So what do we do now? Amy asked. Lisa looked around at the alien technology that humans had learned to master, at the star charts showing worlds they had helped liberate, at the communications from civilizations they had never heard of a year ago. The universe had become much larger and much more complicated than anything she had ever imagined. But she also looked at her friends, who had made this impossible journey with her. Jake, who had taught ordinary people to think like soldiers. Professor Stone, who had turned alien technology into human weapons. Amy, who had kept them connected to resistance groups around the world. They were still the same people who had huddled in university tunnels, afraid and uncertain about the future. We do what humans do best, Lisa said. We adapt. We learn. We help others who need help, and we never, ever give up. The normal girl who had worried about college exams was gone forever. In her place stood someone who had discovered that there was no such thing as an ordinary person when the extraordinary became necessary. Humanity was no longer just fighting for survival. They were fighting for the right of every thinking being in the galaxy to determine their own destiny. The age of human expansion among the stars was about to begin.